G'day and welcome back to Disc Golf Down Under. It's Matt here and this is part 2 of our beginner's guide to disc golf. So if you've missed part 1, check out the link above where we talk about different types of discs, especially for beginners. And in this video, we're going to talk about, once you've got your discs, going out and throwing them. So let's get into it. Okay, so if you've ever played with a throwing frisbee as a kid or as a young adult, you know, you just, nice little throw like that. Very easy. These discs are designed for, so they're easy to throw. They're a bit understable compared to a disc golf disc. And just the throw is just a standard flick of the wrist. But for disc golf, it's a little bit different, and there's a lot more different styles. You'll see backhands, you'll see forehands, you'll see the putting stroke, you might see overhands, thumbers, grenades. There's a whole handful of different shots. But as a beginner, the one that you need to learn the most is the backhand. So 100% of disc golfers will throw the backhand at some point, and that's what we're going to look at today. The mechanics of disc golf are a little bit different. So as we said, the standard frisbee throw is just a flick of the wrist. But for a good long distance disc golf throw, it's really about using the whole body. And there's actually some similarities between ball golf and disc golf. Very similar body movements. It may not look it, but yeah, there's very similar motions. So it's about getting the whole body involved. And there's no other motions like it. I guess the only thing that will be similar to a backhand throw is starting a lawnmower. You know, if you've ever started a lawnmower like that, it's a very similar motion to that. Let's start from the feet up and work from there. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about a right-handed thrower who throws backhand. If you're lefty, then all you need to do is just reverse everything and mirror it around. So put in your left hand and everything will be reversed. Okay, so we're going to start with the feet and work up from there. So always work from the ground up. And what I'm going to do is, we're going to start with a standstill throw. So you might have seen on YouTube and on Jomez and things like that, where people are running up and throwing. Very difficult for a beginner to get a hold of. So for a beginner, it's good to start with a standstill throw and then work up to a running throw. The next thing we need to do is get an alignment. So what I've got here on the ground is a temporary line. So in real life, you're not going to have this, but I put it down here to help visualize the line. So you want your line to be where you're aiming. So if you're throwing a straight disc, you would line your line up with the basket or where you're planning to throw. If your disc goes to the left, let's say it goes 10 meters to the left when you throw it, you want to aim 10 meters to the right of where you want the disc to end up. So your line heads towards the target and then heads off in the opposite direction. So that's our first step. The next thing is we want to get our stance. So a good beginner stance is to put one foot, your toe in behind the line, and then your right foot in front of the line, like that. And just up against it like that. And just get a nice shoulder width apart, get nice and comfortable. And we'll talk a bit about why we've got this stance. If you feel a bit more comfortable, you can bring your feet a little bit closer together, but it's good to have this staggered footwork to help with the throw. So the next thing we want to look at is shifting our weight. So when we do the throw, we want to move our weight from back, pretty much all on our back foot, and we want to come through and have all our weight on the front of on our right foot. So you start off, when you're beginning to throw, you go back, heel weighted, back foot, and then shift forward onto the balls of your feet on your right foot. The biggest mistake that you'll tend to see in beginners is incorrect weight transfer. So you'll see beginners do the opposite thing. So instead of shifting their weight forward into the throw, they'll shift back. So you'll see them, they'll throw off their back foot. And what that tends to do is it tends to throw the disc up in the air, and that sacrifices your height. So your disc goes straight up in the air and then comes back down, and lots of other issues. So we really want to get that weight movement from back to front, and we'll move up from there. So next we'll move on to the hips. So hips are also very important and often forgotten by beginners and even experienced players. The hips are very important in generating power into your drive. So it's good as a beginner to think about it. Don't overthink it, but really it's about moving the hips from off when you move it onto your back leg and then driving through with your hips onto your front. We also need to pivot our hips as we come through the throw. So the hips act like a bit of a spring. So we move back, we pivot back, and then as we come forward, the hips turn. And that helps generate power through the upper body. If we just throw with our hips locked, we're only depending on our upper body. So you're losing a lot of that potential for power. So make sure you get your hips. So a couple of good drills to do is just to, twist the hips side to side, get the movement. And as you move on, what you want to do is you want to get that hip movement in, and it will drive and it will pull through on the disc. So biggest mistake is no hip rotation, so locked hips. And one way to do that is just to relax and get the, warm it up and get that hip movement moving. Okay, the next thing we want to look at is our grip. So it's very important. This is probably one of the most important things for a beginner, is to get the right grip. And so what we want to do is we want to put the disc in our hand and get it in the right spot. So what I've done is actually drawn a line on my hand, and that is where the disc needs to be located. So what we need to do is look at between the two fingers, between your index finger and your middle finger, and you want to draw a line down to the crease at the base of your hand. And that is where the disc is going to go. So we're going to pop the disc in onto that line, and then we're going to wrap our fingers. So we then bring our fingers over into the rim, and you want to get them in there nice and tight, stacked up against each other, and that's what we call the power grip. There's some variations on that. You can look at, some people like to just loosen the front finger, some people like to loosen the pinky, so the three-fingered power grip. But really you'll see most of the pros with the full-on, full power grip with 4 fingers. So that's how we do it. So tuck it in on the middle fingers there, and then roll it down into the base of your wrist, and then get your fingers on the disc. So that is your grip. That's part one. I actually do a little bit further than that. I actually bring mine up a little bit more on the thumb, so it's in the meat of the hand where the thumb is. And I like to do that. So that gives me a little bit more of what we call nose down. So you'll see when we hold the disc now, we hold it out, we want our arm out straight, we want to tip our hand down, and the disc should be pointing nose down. When we throw it, we want the disc to come out flat, or if anything, a little bit nose down. We don't want the disc to come out like that. It's like an aircraft. The disc loses power, gets wind or gets air under the disc, slows it down like an air brake, and you don't get the distance. So to get those strong, long distance throws and to learn as a beginner, you want to get that nose down. Thumb just sits on top over your fingers and it just presses down. Now, you don't want it to be too tight. It's not a death grip. You don't want your fingers to be, white, but you also don't want it to be too loose. So you want that in between. Maybe if you press on it, you'll start to see the white in the base of your fingers or your thumb. So the biggest mistakes that we see in beginners is people holding it like a frisbee. So they hold it, it's really in the fingertips, and trying to flick it with the fingers. We really want to encourage getting it in and getting that power grip right. The other big mistake that we also see is not the nose down. So we tell a lot of people to feel like you're pouring tea. So you tip your hand down as hard as you can. And so when you're throwing, you want to keep that hand, that wrist pushed down to keep the nose of the disc down. So that is the 2 biggest mistakes that we see. This is a very foreign position to hold something. There's nothing that really relates to it. So it may feel uncomfortable as a beginner, but you really want to get that wrist down and practice that. Okay, the next thing we need to look at is our arms. So first of all, the left arm. It tends to just get in the way. So really want to keep it out of the way. And you'll see a lot of throwers, they sort of put it down their side or maybe out the back or whatever. But in the motion, the left hand really does little at all. So you just want to keep it down. You don't want to get it coming up. Otherwise it starts getting in the road and interfering with your throwing hand. So try and keep it down. Can feel a little bit unusual when you're first starting out, but work on keeping that left hand out of the road. Okay, so now back to our stance again. So we've set up our stance, And we've got our line. We can consider this our runway, and we're going to take off from the runway. So we've got our line pointing towards where we want to aim, and then it also aims off in the other direction. So we want to look out at where that line goes to and pick a target. It may be a tree, it may be an object on the ground, a car in a car park or something. So pick your target out there and use that as well. So you've got a target off in the distance and you've got your target there. And what we then want is we want a nice straight line between those two objects. So next, okay, we've got our power grip. So we whack it into our hand, line it up, and then bring it up to our chest. So you want it pretty much on your pec, on your chest. And we want our arm level and bent elbow. So this is what we can consider our starting position. Next, we then want to reach back. So we want to reach back, and we want to reach back and aim. We want to keep this disc in a straight line. So the disc is going to come through across the top of our runway on the ground. So it's going to come in a nice straight line, not an around throw. We're not throwing a discus or something like that. It's a nice straight line. So remember, we're starting a lawnmower. So back up there, starting position number 1. We then reach back. As we reach back, we're going to twist our hips. That helps to rotate the upper body as well. And you want to rotate the body so that we are facing away from our target. So the line of our shoulders, I like to keep facing away from the target. So we reach back. We don't want to have to reach back too far. We don't want to bend over. You want to keep your body upright. So spine straight. So we're just reaching back. You don't have to reach back too far, but we don't want to do a little reach back. You want to just sort of reach back to a nice comfortable spot, keep the body upright, and then come through. So that's position 2. As we move into position 2, we're moving our weight out onto our back foot. So the front foot really has not much on it. It's just sitting there in the air. So we've gone back to position 2. And then as we start the throw, we want to move our weight forward. So that starts the throw. So we're moving our weight onto our hips. We're starting to rotate, and you're bringing the disc back to your chest. You don't want to try and throw it as hard as possible. You can just bring it back nice and easy to this middle position, position 3, which is where we started. And that's where you want to try and generate the power as you come through, and then we want to flick. So come back to position 3, that's where you started. You can see straight, level, flat, nose down, and then we want to flick and throw. And what we want to concentrate on as well is keeping this forearm level. For a flat throw, we want a nice level. We don't want to be dropping the elbow, dropping the forearm. We don't want to be dropping the elbow. That's what generates unusual throws. So keep this forearm level at all times as we come through. So just to demonstrate the technique, so we start up nice and upright, equally balanced. Starting position number 1, we reach back, twisted our shoulders, and then we move forward like that. So as you come through, all the weight's going onto your front foot. And you may even lift your back foot off the ground. So biggest mistakes with the throw is that we mentioned people tend to round arm. They go around their body, not the straight line. And this happens a lot if you're really trying to throw the disc hard. So if you're really trying to just, strong arm it, that's where you bring in the rounding. So we want to avoid that. Try and focus on just a nice, easy coming back from position 2 to position 3. And then, one of my friends, Matt Lemmy, says, get angry with the disc at the end and really throw it then. The other big mistake, as we said, is the left arm getting involved. So, getting it in a position up here, and it interferes and can cause problems with the angle of the disc, the forearm, etc. So try and keep that left arm out of the road. Now some drills that we can do. Every disc golfer, you've seen the towel comes out. So what we want to do, and this is just to practice that, getting the snap at the end. We want to get all the power at the end. So what you want to do, and maybe you've practiced this in the change rooms, is just to reach back and just come through, and you want to hear that nice, you want to hear all the noise at the end. You don't want to hear a whoosh all the way through. You just want to hear that nice little snap at the end. It's almost like cracking the whip. And you can see I can practice this, I can practice my weight shifts. Anyone who's played ball golf, you might notice it's almost a very similar follow through. So that is one drill that we can do. The other drill that we can do is a chest throw. If you've got problems with rounding and you're not getting that disc in, what we can do is just set up like we normally do for a standstill throw, get the disc into position 1, and we're going to skip positions 2 and 3, and we're just going to throw. So we just hold it here and throw. So again, hold it on your chest and throw. And you're not going to get a huge amount of distance out of these throws. It might only go 20-30 meters, but it's about just getting that nice pull through into what we call the power pocket. We can then, once you've just sort of done the standstill, you can then perhaps add a little bit of hip rotation as well to this drill. So we can rotate back and throw forward like that. So they're two drills that you can look at, the towel flick and just the chest throw. This is a good one even for people who are experienced, who have problems with their form. The chest throw is a nice one. Okay, now the last thing we need to look at is the head. What is the head doing through all of this? And one of the things they always say is keep your eye on the target in a lot of sports, so look at the target. But if we do that, when we're reaching back, if we continue to try and keep our eyes on the target, it will affect how much we can pivot back. We can't rotate back fully. We don't have eyes in the back of our head. So if we try and keep the eyes on the target, it's going to affect that back part of the swing. So we need to do something with the head. And there's a couple of different ways people deal with it. Some people will maybe look at the ground. Other people will look at the disc. I personally like to look at the disc. So I start off, I'll be looking down or looking at my hands. So as I reach back, I'll be looking at the disc or looking off at my target in the background. And that's usually what I do. I pick my target, look at my target, and then as I come through, my head is sort of following through. And then as I release, I'm looking at the target. So that's what you want to do with your head. Do not get into the habit of trying to keep the eyes locked on the target. It will affect your power and your backswing. Okay, so we've now talked about all of the mechanics of the throw, working from the feet, up through the hips, upper body, power grip, arms and chest, and through to the head. So now you want to put that all together. And you need to go down to the park with your bag of discs, whether it's only 2 or 3 as you start out, take them down there and learn to throw them. Practice, practice, practice. You'll hear in a lot of sports they talk about muscle memory, and it's the same with disc golf. It's about getting muscle memory so that it just becomes second nature, that you don't have to think about how you're throwing the disc. As a beginner, you're going to be thinking about all these things. Footwork, my hands, what are they doing? My arms, and you'll get confused a lot. You'll do some weird things. But as you practice, you get more comfortable. You will learn to throw the disc better and develop that muscle memory. Also, make sure that you start steady and work up. It's not about getting that instant 100-meter throw straight off the bat. As a beginner, 30, 40, 50 meters may be all you can throw. So just look at that and just be comfortable with that short range distance and then work on getting bigger throws from there. I know when I first started out, I'd come down to this park and I'd pick out a target 100 meters away and I'm trying to throw my discs as hard as I can. And I developed some bad habits, trying to round arm and things like that. Try and avoid that. As a beginner, you want to develop good habits. The other thing is we want to make sure that we try and throw the disc flat. So when we don't want to throw it too high up in the air, we don't want to throw it into the ground. We want to throw it, and you want to aim for maybe 4 or 5 meters above the ground maximum height when you're throwing a disc, for a driver anyway. So keep that disc flat. So we talk about nose angle, keeping it down, keeping the height, aim to keep the disc flying fairly flat. And try and make up some games as well so it doesn't get boring at the park. So you can pick a target out in the field and throw discs, try and get as close as you can, maybe try and hit trees, or throw around trees, practice those different shots. There's also, we'll talk about in future videos, we'll talk about shot shaping. So in this video, we've just talked about keeping it nice and flat, but there's also hyzer shots that make the disc go to the left. We've got anhyzer shots that go to the right, and there's some additional techniques that we'll learn to help with those shots. And finally, I guess the next step, once we've moved on, once we're happy with our standstill throw, so we've got our standstill throw, so just going onto the back foot, coming onto the front foot, that's your starting method. What we can do after we're feeling a bit comfortable with that is to do a step. So a good way to practice that is the same setup as before. We'll start with our feet together, toes on our line, on our target, and starting position as normal. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a step forward. A bit more maybe than what we did previously. So we're going to move on to our front foot, again in heel on the line. And so it's going to be, the technique that we're looking at is position 1, starting position. Position 2, as we go to the back, we want to bring our foot forward, and you want to time it so that your toes hit the ground as you hit the back of your backswing. So maybe just practice that a bit. A couple of steps. It's a bit like a dance. And then what we want to do is we then want to start driving forward onto that front foot. So just to demonstrate that type of throw. So you can see there, that tends to encourage a follow through. So as you bring your weight onto the front and you'll come up, you may lift your foot, or you may even follow through. So that's what we want to do. We want to get that weight shift. We want to get the weight shifting off the back onto the front. So again, just to demonstrate that, feet together, set up, position number 1, position number 2, and then it's through. So thanks guys, I hope that was helpful to all the beginners out there and perhaps even some experienced players out there. Some of us, we tend to forget the basics, so it's always good to go back and check those things out. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you disagree, didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know in the comments down below. If you've got any other drills that you've seen online that you think are handy for beginners, drop them in the comments down below as well. So good luck out there. I'm off for a game of golf. Have fun and see you in the next one.